It was a Saturday morning. I woke up excited. Today I was going over to my girlfriend's house. I woke up around 6 a.m., took a shower and watched some YouTube. It was around 12 p.m. when my girlfriend's mom arrived to pick me up. We sat in the car catching up, chatting and laughing. When we arrived at her house, we sat and watched our favorite shows. After a while we got out of her bed and relaxed with her brother and his girlfriend. We watched the first Conjuring movie. I felt like a real man having her hold me when she got scared. It was nice. We decided we wanted to go on a walk, just me and her. As we made our way to a nearby park, I got this weird feeling we were being watched. It was really unsettling. The cold wind felt like the cold breath of someone behind me watching, waiting. The wind had a discomforting feeling to it, as if you could hear whispers in the passing air. Finally we had arrived at the park. I felt her hand tense up holding mine. She seemed to be scared too. We walked to this park bench, sat down and held hands. As we sat down I went in for a kiss, but was interrupted. From the woods behind us I heard a glass-breaking scream like someone was being brutally stabbed. Reluctantly I walk over to the woods. What are you doing? Are you some kind of idiot, Isaac? You hear a scream and you follow it? Jaden seemed annoyed, rightfully so, but I couldn't just leave knowing someone was hurt and needed us. What if it's just some old lady who fell and broke her leg or something? We should go check it out. Reluctantly Jaden followed Isaac into the woods. As we stepped into the woods, the sticks like broken bones cracking under our feet, the wind like the murmurs of a distant conversion, we felt this strong presence, as if your parents were staring at you but you didn't quite know it. We got deeper into the woods, and I was starting to regret my choice to come in the first place. Out of nowhere, coming as a complete surprise, we had found the source of the scream. We now really wished we hadn't. As you look up at this maybe 70-foot tall pine tree, starting at the very top and leading to the bottom was a trail of blood and organs like a balloon full of red food dye had been popped. Laying at the bottom of the tree, a mangled mess of the corpse of whatever had screamed in the first place. We didn't know why or how, but what we did know is we had to get the fuck out of there. As we booked it through the woods, we felt like we weren't alone anymore. No, we knew we weren't. Footsteps like hammers hitting the ground followed behind us. As we ran, we made a terrifying discovery. We went too deep, we were lost. We struggled to get away from whatever was following us. When we felt it was safe, we stopped and hid in some shrubs under a tree. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I'm gonna get us killed," Isaac said through tear-filled eyes. "Look at me and shut up. We are gonna survive, me and you are gonna get home and we are gonna be fine. I just need you to be strong." Isaac looked up, a newfound strength in him. They got up and began looking for a way out. As we marched through the woods, we heard the thing that was following us again, but this time not only was it heard, but it was seen. As we passed a tree, we looked back to see this monster, a mass of flesh like broken bones and flesh sewn to a clump of organs, at least 7 foot tall in height. Jaden stepped on a stick, cracking and breaking just a little too loud. "Oh fuck." The beast began charging us, damn near knocking over the trees in its wake. Isaac and Jaden ran desperately, trying to escape its grasp, but they weren't fast enough. Isaac's feet were pulled underneath him and he was almost dragged away, but Jaden managed to grab him. Luckily, they were next to a canyon in the woods and the beast fell back, tumbling like a rock down a staircase. Isaac and Jaden kept running on foot, only stopping when Isaac passed out. He fell to the ground too weak to stand. It was probably because of the adrenaline, but they only just noticed a giant gash in his leg. It was bad. You could see bone. It wasn't looking good. "I'm not gonna sit here and let you die, not when I'm the one who brought you here. Just leave without me," I'll yell and make a distraction. "Maybe I can't live, but you can," Isaac said through labored breaths. "No," Jaden snapped. "I will not leave you here like roadkill. We are leaving together." She shed a tear and the guilt for bringing her here only grew. "Well then, let's start finding a way out." Isaac and Jaden began to walk again at a slow pace. Isaac was in a lot of pain, each step sending a shooting pain throughout his body. Isaac leaned on Jaden for support. He was sure to fall without her. They tried to head back in the direction of where the park was. Just as things got more desperate, Jaden had an idea. We could follow the moon back. It had been to the north, and we began in that direction. Not too far from the tree with the body, they were closing in on the park. Just as the tree with the body was in sight, Isaac collapsed again. "I won't let you die. Please leave and live. If not for me, then do it for you." Isaac was a mess of tears, a husk covered in the guilt of bringing her here. "How many times do I have to say this? I will not leave you now. Stand up, we are leaving." They both cried. "Hey Jaden," Isaac asked. "Yeah?" She replied. "Can I hug you? If I die, I want to hold you one last time," he said as a tear ran down his dirt-covered face, leaves and pine needles trapped in his hair. "You can hug me when we get out of here. Now get up. I won't ask again." As they approached the tree with the body, a horrific discovery was made. The body was gone. All that was left was a clump of teeth, blood, and stomach bile. They looked into the distance. Now in the foreground was two massive beasts standing at 7 foot tall. As they looked closer, they didn't believe their eyes. The second beast was the body of the woman, like a puppeteered corpse stretched to 7 foot tall. Isaac held Jaden's mouth, worried a scream may leave her lips. "That thing, it made another one." She looked down at my leg. "You don't think it will happen to you, will it?" she asked with a wave of worry washing her face. "I don't know, but let's leave before we find out." We made our way past the tree where the body was found. We were about a 10-minute walk away from the entrance of the woods. As we grew near, the last thing they wanted to hear began. Not just one set of footsteps, but two, a rhythmic beating in the soil, a song that would mean the end of both of us. As these monsters grew closer, Isaac grew desperate. He pushed Jaden to keep going and ran in another direction, hitting trees and throwing rocks as he went. His plan worked. Jaden was free to run the exit to the woods, and the light shining from the nearby street pole from the park was the only guide out. Jaden stopped, looked back, and began calling for Isaac. "Isaac, are you okay? Hurry, please, I won't leave you." You could hear a faint yelling in the distance. "You need to go. It's all gonna be o dash dot." He was abruptly interrupted. All that could be heard was a scream and a splat like rotten fruit slammed on the concrete. She ran away with tears in her eyes. She had feared the worst, and rightfully so. Isaac's words playing on a loop in her head. "Live, if not for me, then for you." She feared he was gone. Just as she reached the park, she looked back, and that same glass-breaking scream from the bench was heard again. But this time there were 3 of them. They got Isaac. He was gone. I don't know what happened, how it did, or why, but what I do know is that's the last time I take a walk in the woods. My early life inoculated me against believing in ghosts. Childhood offered a brutal education in the very real horrors of abuse and neglect, experiences far more chilling than any campfire tale. The spectral apparitions of popular lore seemed almost trivial in comparison. My refuge, somewhat unexpectedly, was Landon. A fervent devotee of the paranormal, he embraced every creak in the floorboards, every unexplained whisper. Initially, I was dismissive, but his kindness was a stark contrast to the harsh realities I had known. Our relationship began with late-night viewings of low-budget documentaries and hushed discussions in the dark. Then, inexplicably, a winning lottery ticket, perhaps, or a conveniently unmentioned benefactor, he secured funding. A documentary centered on Jepson Bones' killing floor. The name itself sounded like pulp fiction, and I initially dismissed the entire endeavor as a flight of fancy. That is, until I encountered the legal documents. Official contracts, replete with daunting clauses, bore both his signature and, to my increasing unease, my own. The realization dawned, this was no jest. We were committed. Thus, a hardened skeptic, whose personal history could rival the darkest of novels, found herself on a desolate stretch of Nevada highway, alongside a team of eager paranormal investigators. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting elongated, ominous shadows across the crumbling facade of the abandoned prison. It was an unsettling structure, seemingly materializing out of the desert itself. No one in the nearby towns seemed to know its origins, no records existed of its construction, and its presence was barely a whisper in local history. This was the destination, the infamous killing floor, a place known only through a single, chilling legend. And everything I thought I understood about fear, about the nature of monsters, about the things that lurk in the unseen corners of the world, was about to be irrevocably altered. The drive out had been enlightening. Landon, bless his heart, had assembled a team from a reputable paranormal investigation agency. These weren't wide-eyed amateurs like him. These were seasoned professionals, each with their own specialty, EMF readings, EVP analysis, even a psychic medium. And they all knew the story. All of them except me. You've never heard of Jepson Bone? Dr. Eris Thorne, the team's lead investigator and a man whose perpetually furrowed brow suggested he'd seen things that couldn't be unseen, had asked, his voice laced with a mixture of disbelief and morbid curiosity. Landon, sensing my ignorance, had taken over, eager to share his obsession. Jepson Bone wasn't just some crazy guy, he'd explained, his voice hushed with reverence. He was something else. Something ancient. Before the prison, before any building at all, this land belonged to him. He was a butcher, a monster in human skin. They say he roamed these plains, killing anyone who crossed his path. Men, women, children, it didn't matter. He delighted in it. People called him by different names, the Jester of Jaws, the Crimson Harlequin, the Giggling Reaper, but the terror he inspired was always the same. And it wasn't just random killings, chimed in Sarah, the team's psychic, her eyes distant, as if she were peering into the past. It was ritualistic. Almost sacrificial. They say he'd drain his victim's blood, use it to paint symbols on the ground, symbols of something dark. Landon continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Eventually, his reign of terror ended. They caught him, finally. But they didn't just hang him. They buried him alive, right here, on this very spot. They say his spirit, it's still here. Trapped. Infusing the very ground with his evil. That's why they call it the killing floor. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Even if you leave this place, Alicia, he said, his eyes meeting mine, he follows you. But why a clown? I asked, the image of a painted face, twisted in a rictus grin, flickering in my mind. It seemed so incongruous. So childish. So wrong. Sarah's eyes flickered back to the present, a flicker of understanding in their depths. The clown, that's part of the ritual, too, she said softly. It's a mockery. A twisted imitation of joy. Jepson Bone, he wasn't just a murderer. He was a defiler. He took the most innocent things, laughter, joy, childhood, and corrupted them, turned them into instruments of fear. Dr. Thorne, ever the historian, chimed in. There are historical precedents, you know. The medieval Feast of Fools, for instance. Rituals where the social order was inverted, where jesters and fools reigned supreme for a single night. But it wasn't just about revelry. There was a darker side to it, a connection to ancient pagan rites, sacrifices made to appease something. Something old. Something hungry. Landon nodded, picking up the thread. And clowns themselves, their history is more complicated than we think. They weren't always just entertainers. In some cultures, they were seen as liminal figures, existing between worlds. Tricksters. Agents of chaos. Even psychopomps, guides of the dead. He paused, his gaze fixed on some unseen point beyond the prison walls. Jepson Bone, he tapped into something primal, something ancient. He perverted the symbols of joy, turned them into instruments of terror. He became more than human. He became the embodiment of fear itself, cloaked in the guise of laughter. A chill, colder than the desert night, ran through me. For the first time, the idea of ghosts, of something beyond, didn't seem so ridiculous. It felt possible. And terrifying. The van shuddered to a halt, its headlights cutting through the oppressive darkness that clung to the prison like a shroud. Stepping out onto the uneven ground, I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The prison loomed before us, a grotesque monument to suffering and despair. Its walls were scarred and cracked, the rusted bars of its windows like skeletal fingers reaching out into the night. The wind whistled through the broken panes, and for a moment, I could have sworn I heard it, a chorus of hushed screams, carried on the breeze, whispering tales of unimaginable torment. Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, my eyes darting nervously towards the others. Landon, his face pale in the moonlight, looked as if he were about to suggest we pack up and head back to civilization. But the rest of the team, they were practically vibrating with excitement. Sarah, the psychic, had her eyes closed, a serene smile playing on her lips. Mark and Emily, the tech specialists, were already unloading equipment from the van, their movements brisk and efficient. "Hear what, Alicia?" Mark asked, his voice tinged with a hint of amusement. "The wind?" "No, it sounds like screaming," I stammered, feeling a blush creep up my neck. Sarah's eyes snapped open, and she turned towards me, her gaze intense. "Yes," she breathed, "I hear it too." So many voices, trapped, suffering. A shiver ran down my spine. This was no ordinary haunting. This was something else. Eris Thorne, ever the pragmatist, clapped his hands together. "All right, team," he announced, his voice firm, "let's get to work." Mark, Emily, set up the base camp. Sarah, I want you to do a preliminary sweep of the perimeter. Landon, Alicia, you're with me. We'll start with the main cell block. He paused, his eyes glinting in the darkness. This is going to be a good one. And with that, we stepped across the threshold, into the belly of the beast, a carnival of unimaginable suffering. The initial exploration of the prison's interior yielded a chilling discovery. While the rest of the structure was eerily devoid of any signs of recent habitation, the killing floor itself was a scene of macabre artistry. Skeletal remains, some still bearing tattered remnants of clothing, lay scattered across the cracked concrete. The bones themselves were adorned with strange symbols, crudely etched yet disturbingly precise. "These aren't fresh," Dr. Thorne observed, his voice grim. "No one's been here for decades, at least." I glanced at Landon. The color had drained from his face, leaving him a sickly shade of green. It was then I realized something. He might have been a believer in the paranormal, but I could see in his eyes that he hadn't truly believed in this. The reality of Jepson Bone, the palpable evil that permeated this place, was settling in on all of us, even the seasoned professionals. But fear, it seemed, wasn't enough to deter them. The equipment was set up, cameras, recorders, EMF readers, all humming with anticipation. The seance began, the air thick with tension. And then, everything changed. It wasn't just the whispers, the flickering lights, the sudden drops in temperature. It was him. Jepson Bone. Not a wispy apparition, but a full-bodied manifestation of pure malice. He was everything the legends described and more, a clownish figure with eyes that burned like embers, a grotesque parody of joy. He radiated an aura of power that dwarfed anything I'd ever imagined. This wasn't just a ghost. This was a primal force of darkness, something that made the demons of my childhood seem like playful imps. And then, before our very eyes, he acted. He didn't just haunt. He killed. It was Sarah. The psychic. The one who had sensed him first, who had spoken of the trapped voices. He turned his attention on her, his movements swift and brutal, a horrifying ballet of supernatural violence. One moment she was there, her eyes wide with terror, the next, he was upon her. His grin widened, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth, and with a sickening, wet sound, he plunged his hand into her chest. Not through it, but into it. His fingers, impossibly long and skeletal, wriggled within her torso, as if searching for something. Sarah's screams turned into gurgled gasps as blood erupted from her mouth, her eyes bulging in their sockets. He didn't pull anything out this time. Instead, he clenched his fist, and with a series of sickening crunches, crushed her ribcage from the inside. Her bones audibly snapped and compressed, her body contorting into a grotesque, unnatural shape. Then, with a horrifyingly casual flick of his wrist, he rolled her now compacted form across the floor. It slammed into the wall with a sickening thud, leaving a smear of blood and viscera. He chuckled, a high-pitched, childish giggle, and then, as if he were bowling, he picked up her body, now almost spherical, and swung it with tremendous force towards the rest of us. The sight was too much. Panic erupted. Screams filled the air, my own among them, as we scrambled to escape the monstrous entity. The room descended into chaos, equipment crashing to the floor as we fled, the image of Sarah's mutilated body, used as a projectile, seared into my mind forever. We never returned to that place. The company that had funded Landon's ill-fated project sent their own team to retrieve the footage. They managed to recover some of it, chilling, undeniable proof of Jepson Bone's existence. His spectral form, clear as day, was captured on camera. But the rest, the crucial moments, the horror we had witnessed, were lost. Replaced by static. But not just any static. This was different. Embedded within the white noise were fleeting images, glimpses of faces contorted in agony, thousands of them, as if the very air itself was screaming. The recovered footage was a sensation, of course. Irrefutable evidence of the paranormal. But none of us who were there that night felt any sense of triumph. We carried the weight of what we had seen, the knowledge of the true nature of the evil that lurked within those walls. The fame, the recognition, it meant nothing. All it did was remind us of Sarah, of the terror, and of the fact that Jepson Bone was still out there. And that, even now, years later, I could still feel the phantom weight of his gaze on my back, the echo of his chilling laughter in my ears. The disappearances began subtly, almost unnoticed. A missing person here, a vanishing without a trace there. But then, the frequency increased. News reports blared headlines about the growing number of unsolved cases. Faces of the missing flashed across television screens, their stories recounted in hushed, worried tones. Newspapers ran front-page articles speculating about possible causes, ranging from the mundane to the bizarre. And then, the reporters came to our doors. They wanted to know if we knew anything about the disappearances. Did we have any leads? Had we seen anything suspicious? Landon, his face etched with a fear I knew mirrored my own, became a master of deflection. He crafted plausible alibis, offered vague, non-committal responses, and did everything he could to avoid drawing attention to what we knew. Because we did know. We knew why these people were vanishing. We knew the chilling truth that no one else suspected. And the knowledge of it was a constant, gnawing terror, a weight that pressed down on us with every passing day. We were living with a secret so monstrous, so unbelievable, that sharing it would only paint targets on our backs. We were trapped in a silent pact of fear, bound together by the horror we had witnessed, the horror that now stalked the streets, claiming its victims one by one. And we were terrified. Fucking terrified. The weight of our shared secret hung heavy in the air, a suffocating blanket of dread that threatened to consume us. But that night, Landon, bless his soul, tried to pierce through the darkness. We sat at our small kitchen table, the remnants of a simple pasta dinner pushed aside. He reached across, his hand finding mine, his touch a lifeline in the storm. "Alicia," he said, his voice low and earnest, "I promise you, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to find a way to stop him. There's always a way." His words, though laced with a desperate hope, were a balm to my frayed nerves. He was still that kind, determined Landon I had fallen for, the one who refused to let the darkness win. He leaned in, his eyes locking with mine, and in that moment, the fear seemed to recede, replaced by a flicker of something akin to love, a defiant spark in the face of overwhelming odds. "We'll figure it out," he whispered, his lips brushing against my forehead. "I won't let him take you. I promise." Later that night, the warmth of his words still lingering, I stepped into the shower. The hot water cascading over my skin was a welcome respite, a temporary escape from the chilling reality that awaited outside the bathroom door. I closed my eyes, letting the steam and the rhythmic sound of the water wash away the anxieties that had plagued me throughout the day. "Landon?" I called out, a smile playing on my lips as I heard the bathroom door creak open. "Is that you?" Silence. "Landon, why aren't you answering me?" I chuckled, playfully. "Cat got your tongue?" Still no response. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. Something wasn't right. With a growing sense of dread, I slowly opened my eyes. And then I saw him. Jepson Bone. Not a suggestion, not a shadow, but him, in all his grotesque glory. He stood in the doorway, his clownish face a mask of pure evil. He held something in his hand, something that made my blood run cold. It was Landon's head. Not neatly severed, but torn from his body, the ragged edges of his neck glistening with blood and something else. Wisps of tissue and sinew clung to the torn flesh, dangling like grotesque decorations. His eyes, wide and vacant, stared up at the ceiling, a single tear track etched through the blood that matted his hair. One side of his face was missing. Chewed away, leaving a gaping hole that revealed the bone beneath. Jepson Bone grinned, a wide, terrifying expanse of teeth, flecked with red. He took a step closer, and then another. He didn't need to speak. His presence, the chilling stillness, the grotesque trophy in his hand, said it all. He had promised to protect me. And he had failed. Now, it was my turn. As a final, twisted jest, Jepson Bone raised Landon's head. With a sickening, wet slap, he positioned the bloody, mutilated face so that its sightless eyes covered my nakedness. The grotesque parody of modesty was the final, devastating blow. Terror gave way to a chilling, hollow despair. I was trapped, not just by fear, but by the utter, obscene violation of everything I knew. But this isn't just my story. It's yours now, too. You've heard the name, haven't you? Jepson Bone. It's a sticky thing, isn't it? Like a burr, clinging to your thoughts. You've imagined his face, haven't you? That grotesque parody of a smile, those eyes that burn like holes punched through hell. You've pictured the horror, the blood, the terror, haven't you? Don't lie. I know you have. And that's all it takes. A whisper in the dark, a fleeting image in the corner of your eye, and he's there. He's always there. Lurking just beyond the edge of your perception, a predator in the shadows of your mind. So, tell me, do you feel that chill crawling up your spine? That prickling sensation at the back of your neck? That's him. He's closer than you think. He's breathing down your neck, whispering promises of pain in your ear. And I'm so sorry for what you've just unleashed. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unhear what you've heard. He's in your head now, burrowing deep, making a home for himself in your nightmares. Sleep tight. And watch your back. Because he's watching you. Waiting. The only escape from the curse is a cruel trick of the light. There is no escape. There is only transference. To inflict it upon another, to pass the hex like a venomous touch, letting their own fear give him shape and substance. This title is the lure. It draws you in. It promises a story, but delivers a curse. The others didn't just die, they were vessels, each one slowly corrupted, their terror recorded on grainy, flickering video, a testament to the curse's insidious power. Like the cursed videotape from Japan, the documentary's release was a sacrifice, a dark pact made in exchange for notoriety, a Faustian bargain paid in screams. This prison, like those impossible staircases that twist and vanish in the blackest heart of the woods, feels fundamentally wrong, a tear in the fabric of reality itself. Was it always here, a malevolent entity waiting in the wings of existence? Or did some unholy act, some forgotten rite, summon it into being? It doesn't matter. I know the ritual now, the words to pass the curse on. And by reading these words, so do you. We're bound together now, trapped in this nightmare. There is no escape. There is only sharing the terror. As for me, well, my soul forever roams the home of Jepson Bone, the place they call the killing floor. You'll be joining me soon.